Hi guys, we are discussing the book The Rigvedic People by Acharya B.B. Lal, and today we start the 6th chapter. I'll do it in 3 parts because it's a huge chapter. This chapter is called From Pit Dwellings to Fortified Cities, The Evolution of Civilization in the Sarasvati Basin. Introductory. In the preceding chapter, we have had a detailed discussion on the identification of the famous Rigvedic river Sarasvati and do not propose repeating the same here. Suffice it to recall that it is none other than what goes by the name of the Sarasvati Ghaggar combined in Haryana and the Ghaggar in Rajasthan, both in India, and by the names of the Hakra in Cholistan and the Nara in Sindh, both in Pakistan, reaching all the way down to the Arabian Sea. In the present chapter, we propose showing that there is a continuous story of evolution of civilization in the Sarasvati Basin, right from the time when its first, as known today, occupants started living in pit dwellings in the 5th millennium BCE up to the time when they built fortified and highly prosperous cities in the 3rd millennium BCE. There is no cultural break in this evolution, nor is there any infiltration of people with an alien culture. Hence, we have decided to use the term stage, such as stage 1, stage 2, etc., when a noteworthy change took place in the course of an ongoing cultural evolution. We have consciously avoided the term period because it is normally to be used when there is a break of occupation and a subsequent reoccupation of the site, usually involving the appearance of a different cultural complex. Now, stage 1, the pit dwellers. A, in a place called Bhirana. First we are discussing Bhirana. The curtain rises at Bhirana, which is its coordinates are 29 degrees 33 minutes north and 75 degrees 33 minutes east. The curtain rises at Bhirana, a somewhat sleepy village located at a distance of about 15 kilometers northeast of Fatehabad, a district headquarters in Haryana. The nearest railway station, Hisar Junction, is some 60 kilometers away, which makes it more sensible to undertake journey by road to Bhirana. A little away from the village, on the left bank of the ancient Sarasvati, which is now dry and is known as the Ghaggar, lies the ancient mound, measuring on plan about 190 meters east-west and 150 meters north-south and rising at places to a height of 5.50 meters above the surrounding ground level. The nature of the pits. The excavation at the site, carried out for 3 seasons between 2003 and 2006 by L.S. Rao, etc., and 2005 and 6, and Nandini Bhattacharya and Sahu in 2012. Now, these excavations made a somewhat startling revelation that the first settlers over here lived in circular pits dug into the ground level. These pits measured from 2.30 meters to 3.40 meters in diameter and from 34 centimeters to 58 centimeters in depth. For all intent and purposes, these were not formidable pits, but just sufficient to accommodate a couple, and at best a child or two. The walls were plastered with mud, and the same treatment was also given to the floor. The excavators have stated that they did not come across any holes along the edge of these pits, which could have carried posts to support a peripheral wall. However, in one of the pits, they did find a chunk of clay bearing reed impressions, R-E-E-D, reed impressions, which has suggested to them that, in all probability, there was some kind of covering of wattle and daub, W-A-T-T-L-E and D-A-U-B, daub. This is understandable since sleeping in the pit without any overhead shed, particularly during winters, would have been hazardous. Perhaps further work at the site might make the picture much clearer. These dwelling pits were complemented with other pits which their contents suggest were used for cooking and maybe sacrificial and even industrial purposes. In one of the pits there occurred charred bovid skulls as well as other charred bones, pottery and ash. Of further interest was the discovery close to a dwelling pit of a low circular mud platform and an open-mouthed hearth, Hearth, the latter evidently being used for cooking and the platform for sitting close by. Now, the cultural level of this stage. One would have normally thought that these pit dwellers of Bhirana were at a Neolithic level of culture, using stone axes and other tools, but that was not the case. Interestingly, the inhabitants had well stepped into Copper Age, as clearly established by the occurrence in these strata of a bangle and an arrowhead of copper. In fact, in one of the pits, fragments of crucibles with specks of molten copper still sticking to them have also been found, indicating local manufacturing activity. On other accounts too, the people showed a pretty high level of industrial and cultural development. For example, there occurred beads of semi-precious stones such as agate, I don't know how to pronounce this, agate, agate or agate, carnelian, jasper, and even lapis lazuli, the last named material having had its source far away in the west. Querns and Querns, querns and pestles, Pestles. Querns and pestles of sandstone were evidently used for grinding materials for cookery, while sling balls of terracotta and sandstone may have been used for hunting small games. Not much was found by way of ornaments used by the women folks except for the beads already referred to, which may have made nice necklaces, and copper and terracotta bangles, the latter being both plain and painted. Perhaps it may be well worthwhile to draw attention to the presence of triangular cakes of clay, which, though unbaked, seem to be the harbinger of baked triangular terracotta cakes that became a very distinctive feature of the subsequent mature Harappan civilization, which is stage 4. Again, one example of chert blade, Chert, one example of chert blade is also to be noted for its presence, since such blades do become a regular feature of the Harappan repertoire. Now, the pottery. What is most noteworthy is the distinctive pottery used by the pit dwellers of Bhirana. It has come to be known in the archaeological literature as the Hakra ware, Ware, because of its having been identified for the first time in the Cholistan region of Pakistan, where the dried up Sarasvati river goes by the name of the Hakra. Amongst the Hakra wares, the most distinctive one is what is known as the mud applique ware. Applique is spelled as Applique. In this case, the pots have a coating of mud mixed with white calcareous granules. The shapes are either globular pots, which are usually wheel-made and have a somewhat thin coating, or heavy-bodied storage jars, which are handmade and covered with a thick coating. Under another noteworthy category come incised wares. The incised designs appearing on the exterior of the pots, which had no slip on them, were executed before firing and fall into two broad categories, namely deeply incised and shallow ones. The former include rows of chevrons and crisscrosses covering the area from the shoulder to the belly. Above and below these incised patterns, sometimes there were horizontal bands in black color. The shallow designs, usually executed on smaller vessels, include wavy lines which had above and below them 2 or 3 parallel horizontal incised lines. A very distinctive shape of pot in the incised ware was that of handled vases, which may have been used as jugs for drinking water. This you need to see the picture of. You'll notice the incised designs on the pots. Yet another noteworthy category associated with the dwelling pits was that having tan or chocolate slip. The slip was sometimes confined to the neck, but in other cases went to the belly or even all the way down to the base. There were quite a few varieties of shapes in this ware, which included straight-sided bowls, troughs, ring-based pots and globular pots with everted rims. Then there was the red ware, sometimes plain and at others painted in black color with designs like loops, triangles and crisscrosses. Now, the chronological horizon. How old are these pit dwellings? To answer this question, one has but to refer to the carbon-14 dates supplied by the Birbal Sahani Institute of Paleobotany, Lucknow, to which 8 charcoal samples recovered from the site during the course of the 2003-2004 field season were sent. These were published by L.S. Rao et al. In Puratattva 35, 2005, page 67, and are reproduced below. It's a huge chart. The sad part about this table, that chart I'm talking about, you won't understand anything unless you read it yourself. So I hope you all buy this book and read some of these parts. I'm just helping you out with getting you interested in this book, but do buy this book. The sad part about this table is that it does not specify the exact stratigraphic horizon of the individual samples. These are just numbered as BRN1 to BRN8. Unfortunately, the principal excavator of the site passed away some time back, and right now there is no one to clarify the position. Let us, however, try to make the best of a somewhat bad situation. Sample BRN2, according to the comment given in the table itself, is contaminated and has therefore to be discontinued. Samples BRN1 and BRN3 fall within the 2nd millennium BCE and may perhaps relate to a late stage of the Harappan civilization. The dates of samples BRN4 and BRN8 being respectively 2492 to 213 BCE, 2492 to 2213 BCE and 2856 to 2468 BCE would appear to relate to the mature Harappan civilization. So about 4000 years from today, 4500 years from today. We are now left with samples BRN5, BRN6 and BRN7, which give the dates as 5336 to 4721 BCE, which is about 7000 years from today, and 6647 to 6221 BCE, and 4770 to 4353 BCE respectively. These may perhaps relate to the earliest settlements at the site, namely that of the pit dwellers, since the date 6647 to 6221 BCE is far too early. It may for the time being be set aside. The two other dates, namely 5336 to 4721 BCE and 4770 to 4353 BCE, are significant. Thus, in the present state of our knowledge, it would be reasonable to assign a 5th millennium BCE horizon to the pit dwellers. 5th millennium BC, so about 7000 to 7500 BC, 7500 years from today. 5th millennium BC horizon to the pit dwellers of Bhirana, if not somewhat earlier. Note, there are subsequent cultural stages at Bhirana, but we shall deal with the same later. Now, Kunal. Not far from Bhirana and also located on the left bank of the now dried Sarasvati, the ancient mound at Kunal covers an area measuring approximately 3 acres and rises to a height of about 4 meters above the surrounding ground level. It falls in Tehsil Ratia of district Hisar, Haryana, and can be approached via Bhuna, a town about 12 kilometers away from the site. The excavations over here were carried out by Shri J. S. Khatri and Shri M. Acharya, officers of the Haryana government. Originally, the land surfaced over here was undulating and unfit for direct occupation. Hence, the first inhabitants thought it fit to level it up by spreading over it about 70 centimeters of red kankari earth brought from the neighborhood. The inhabitants then dug into this surface and the underlying natural soil pits for their dwelling. These pits were of varying sizes on plan and in depth. One of these measured about 2 meters in diameter and a little over 1 meter in depth. Its floor was rammed and the walls smoothened so as to make it fit for living. These pits were not left to open not left open to the sky, but seem to have been duly covered. This is suggested by the discovery of holes along the periphery, which evidently served as bases for holding posts inserted in them. The superstructure may have been that of wattle and daub, or just a thatched one. Cooking seems to have been done outside the dwelling pit, there also being a small pit nearby to hold refuse. The pottery used by these earliest inhabitants of Kunal was more or less similar to that used by their counterparts at Bhirana, already described in some detail earlier. The two characteristic wares of the Hakra complex referred to in the context of Bhirana, vis-a-vis the mud applique and incised wares, were conspicuous by their presence. In addition, there was a bichrome ware in which two colors, namely black and white, were used, the former for the outline of the design and the latter for infilling. These Kunal pit dwellers, like their Bhirana counterparts, had duly entered the Copper Age, which is clear from the occurrence of fish hooks and arrowheads. The former used for catching fish and the latter for killing small games, obvious supplements to their cereal diet. In respect of the arrowheads, it may be mentioned that these were of the inverted V type. Further, within this general type, there were two subtypes. In one case, the sides on the exterior were straight, while in the other, these were incurved towards the lower end, a type conspicuously present at the Copper Age site of Ganeshwar in Rajasthan. Within stage 1, there is what may be called its substage, a period IB of the excavators. Now the walls of the pits were provided with a line of mud bricks to give them better stability and surely a better look. However, the bricks were not standardized, their sizes being 10 by 37 centimeters, 11 by 38 centimeters, and 11 by 24 by 39 centimeters. The size of the pits the size of the pits also increased, up to 3 meters in diameter, perhaps to provide room for an extended family. Also within the pit itself, mud brick hearths were observed, indicating that cooking was done within the dwelling pit itself. In this substage, the quantum of the Hakra ware, particularly the mud applique ware, began to diminish, while that of the bichrome ware somewhat increased. Figure 4.2, let's see, where is 4.2? Oh, figure 4.2 was long back, which I showed. Figure 4.2 illustrates 3 potsherds of this ware, amongst which particular attention may be drawn to one bearing the peepal leaf design and another the peacock. Both are characteristically Indian. In fact, the peacock has been adopted by the government as the national bird. These two motifs also continue with greater frequency in the mature Harappan times, which is stage 4, which will be dealt with in detail subsequently. In this substage, there also occurred certain pottery shapes, such as jars and beakers in sturdy red ware, which clearly anticipate their Harappan counterparts. Likewise, one may also note the presence of a few specimens of terracotta cakes, which again remind one of the mature stage, because it's one cultural continuity going on and on. Now, the Cholistan region. We may now move all the way down the Sarasvati river to the Cholistan region in Pakistan. Here, Muhammad Rafiq Mughal had carried out extensive explorations during 4 field season from 1974 to 1977. The dry bed of the Sarasvati is known in this region as the Hakra, after which the earliest pottery complex discovered in the area has been named as the Hakra ware complex. The exploration brought to light 99 sites of the Hakra ware complex, 40 of early Harappan culture, 174 of the mature Harappan culture, 50 of late Harappan times, and 14 of the painted grey ware period. Since we are concerned just now with the earliest, that is the Hakra ware sites, we shall deal with them in some detail. According to the observations of Mughal, quote, 52% of the total number of the Hakra ware sites represent campsites, while 45% are permanent settlements. End quote. Since Mughal has not carried out any worthwhile excavation in the region except for a minor trial pit at one site, It is difficult to offer any comments on the nature of these subcategories, namely whether the campsites were chronologically a prelude to the permanent settlements, or the occupants of the temporary camps were just nomadic people moving from place to place, supplying milk, meat, and similar materials to the communities settled at the permanent sites, and perhaps attending to their other needs. Although we have already dealt with the Hakrawares in the context of Bhirana, these, representing the most distinctive feature of this stage, are dealt with in some detail here, quoting wherever necessary from the description given by Mughal himself. The first category he refers to is the Hakra incised ware, his category A. Quote, "It is characterized by thick and thin, large and small vessels decorated on the external surface with groups of multiple incised lines drawn horizontally, diagonally, and in a wavy manner. It is extremely well fired and thick." End quote. The vessels are wheel made, as shown in figure 6.5. Look at this. His next category, B, is the Hakra applique ware. Says he, quote, "A thick coating of mud mixed with small pieces of pottery and applied to the external surface of the vessels of many shapes and body thickness is the most distinguishing feature of pottery grouped under this category. It is necessary to stress that the Hakra applique with a thick body texture is all handmade." The second picture I showed just now. Thereafter, Mughal makes an important remark. Quote, "In general terms, it may be significant to point out that at sites where Hakra applique is most frequent, the Hakra incised occurs less in number and vice versa. What it implies, end quote. What it implies, Mughal has not cared to explain. Yet another noteworthy category amongst the Hakra wares is what has been termed as quote unquote Hakra black burnished. It includes quote wheel-made carinated vases of thin fabric, red body, and painted with a glossy black slip on the external surface. Rims of such vases are sharp and the carination above the base is very distinctive. Large vessels with high neck in this category are painted with non-glossy black color all over the external surface. In addition, wide-shouldered vessels with sharp carination in the middle of body are present, recalling shapes from the site of Anjira in central Balochistan." End quote. Rare examples of white and black paint also occur, and so do a few shards of painted buff pottery. Talking of the antiquities associated with the Hakra culture in Cholistan, one is immediately struck by the presence of microliths. The types include small parallel-sided blades as well as long blades with retouched edges. Figure 6.7. Look at this. You'll have to buy this book and see these pictures for yourself. Then there are a few other tool types, including scrapers and points. A variety of stones was used for these microliths, including such non-local ones as the agate or agate. However, the presence of a few cores would indicate that at least some of the tools were made locally. In this context, it may be mentioned that no microliths were met with at Bhirana. What does this imply? Does it mean the Cholistan substage of the Hakra culture is somewhat earlier than that at Bhirana? We must, however, await the discovery of a few more exclusively Hakraware sites along the upstream region of the Ghaggar-Sarasvati combine before arriving at any conclusion. The other antiquities from these Hakraware sites in Cholistan include bangles, variously of terracotta and shell, grinding stones, long cylindrical pestles, and humped animal figurines with short legs, both of terracotta. From one of the sites also came up the hind part of a terracotta figurine with 4 udders, evidently a cow. Since no excavation was carried out by Mughal at any of the sites in Cholistan, it is difficult to say anything about the nature of the dwellings of the Hakraware people. Were they living in pits as did the Hakraware people of Bhirana and Kunal? Only excavations of selected sites of both the categories, namely campsites and permanent settlements, can throw light on the issue. As to the chronological horizon of the Hakraware sites in Cholistan, there is no direct evidence, as exists in the case of Bhirana. However, at Jalilpur near Multan, Mughal himself discovered this ware in deposits underlying those of the Kotdijian culture. And since the Kotdijian culture is ascribable to the 4th millennium BCE, the Hakra complex of Cholistan would certainly antedate that. Antedate that. Antedate that. For all one knows, it may well go back to the 5th millennium BCE.